Today, we're going to talk about the principle that made Marc Newson one of the most influential creative minds on the planet. And this isn't just about cool chairs or fancy watches. No, it's a story about finding incredible power, not in some wild new invention, but in mastering something we all think we get, the familiar. All right, let's get into it. Just let that hang there for a second. The way to the absolute top of his game wasn't about being the weirdest, the most out there, or the most original. It was something completely different. And this one idea, this paradox, is the key that unlocks his entire career. So, if it wasn't about inventing a new shape, what on earth was his secret? Okay, so here's how we're going to unpack that. First, we'll look at his big idea, a familiar future. Then, we'll go back to his beginnings as the Sydney Sovereign. We're going to decode the comfort level philosophy that became his secret weapon and see how he actually used it with the analog system. Then we'll watch his rise as the modern polymath, and finally figure out how you can use this same logic with your form is the code. Let's start with that main principle. You see, Marc Newson's real superpower wasn't dragging the world kicking and screaming into some future it didn't recognize. It was actually the total opposite. He was a master at making the future feel familiar. He just got it. Real influence isn't about forcing radical change on people. It's about being the person they trust to lead them into what's next at their own comfort level. It's a really subtle but powerful way to think. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it reveals a huge strategic choice he made. You know, the classic artist can get away with alienating people. Sometimes that's the whole point. But Newson, he chose a different path. He called himself a maker. And a maker is obsessed with the user, with how a curve feels in your hand, with that seamless transition that makes a brand new object feel like it's been in your life forever. He knew true authority doesn't come from shocking people, but from earning their trust on a deep, almost subconscious level. So where did this completely different way of seeing the world come from? Well, it wasn't born in the usual spots like Milan or Paris. It was forged in isolation, on the creative edge of the world. To really get the Newson Principle, you have to understand the Sydney Sovereign, this outsider who, because he had to, built his own creative kingdom from the ground up. Let's just quickly trace his path. As a kid, he was always on the move, soaking up what the source material calls his mother's architectural logic, this gut feeling that design was a physical language. He went to jewelry school, but not to make jewelry. He saw it as a portal to understanding the deep truth of handmade things. But that was followed by a tough period, what he called the soul-crushing weight of making sculptures that nobody seemed to care about. And then, in 1986, all that pressure, all that learning, it all came together in one single act. Him, in a workshop, painstakingly riveting aluminum plates by hand onto a fiberglass frame. Not because it looked cool, but to solve a technical problem. The result? The Lockheed Lounge. And this just shows you exactly what he was up against. At the time, the so-called experts in Milan were making furniture that was all sharp angles, super intellectual, and obsessed with the latest trend. Newson's work was the complete opposite. It was biomorphic and tactile. You just wanted to touch it. It wasn't about what was cool in 1986. It was about a form that felt timeless, almost anciently familiar. He wasn't chasing approval. He was chasing material purity. And this is the core idea right here. What looked like a style, all these smooth, organic shapes, it wasn't a style at all. It was a philosophy, a permanent truth. It was his sovereign biomorphism, which is really just his personal belief in creating forms inspired by the smooth, natural curves all around us. It was like an internal fortress he built during those lonely years, a complete refusal to follow the herd that became the foundation for everything that came next. All that friction, all that isolation, it wasn't for nothing. It got compressed into a philosophy as hard as a diamond. He took the struggle of his early days and turned it into a clear, powerful set of rules. He started treating his studio not as a place to make things look nice, but as a laboratory for the truth. And it was all dedicated to one powerful idea, the comfort level. Okay, first rule of this philosophy, material honesty. Now listen to the language here. Lethal professional weapon. Why lethal? Because this isn't just about being authentic. It's a strategic move to get past all the arguments about what looks good. When you deeply respect your materials, the cool touch of aluminum, the warmth of wood, you create something that's just undeniable. It cuts right through trends because it's real. Your mastery of the material becomes a truth that just shuts down critics and connects right to the user's senses. That, my friends, is a weapon. The second rule is the comfort level itself. And this is the big one. Futurism must be familiar. Newson figured out that every time a design is so weird that a person hesitates to even touch it, power is lost, the connection is broken. He believed that real influence comes from creating things that feel new and advanced, but also so intuitive that they feel like you've known them your whole life. It's the perfect on-ramp from the world we know to the one that's coming next. And his third rule? He called it applied sculpture. This is an art for art's sake. The idea is simple. Every curve, every surface, every single decision has one goal: to bring joy to the person using it. It's totally human-centric. An object isn't really finished when it comes off the assembly line. It's finished when it connects with a person, when it feels good in their hand, when it does its job with elegance and pleasure. The work is only as good as the feeling it creates. But look, a philosophy is just words, right? The real magic is how you make it real, day in and day out. And for that, Newson built a super rigorous analog system, a set of actual habits designed to make sure that every single thing he made was true to what he believed. At the very heart of his system is the Sketchbook Protocol. In a world totally run by screens, Newson is famous for refusing to design on a computer at first. Why? Because sketching by hand forces a physical reaction. You feel the energy of the shape through the pen on the paper. This physical act forces what the source calls narrative clarity. The story of the object has to be obvious in its simplest lines. And most importantly, it makes sure the final form feels human, intuitive, and familiar right from the very beginning. And it didn't stop with the sketchbook. His system had other key parts. He did the Material Audit, a constant, almost obsessive check to make sure the feel of his materials was always honest. He practiced radical observation, looking for what he called technical cheat codes in other industries, like aerospace, to help him innovate without just following trends. He lived by the maker model, refusing to be just a furniture designer and instead applying his talent to any industry that needed it. And finally, systematic iteration, treating his studio like a lab, where every curve is tested over and over until it's a direct threat to just plain boring utility. So what's the payoff for all this discipline, this rigorous system? Well, it was massive. It took Marc Newson from being an isolated craftsman in a Sydney workshop and turned him into a global force. A modern polymath who could apply his core principle to basically any field, completely changing what we thought a designer could even be. Let's just look at the proof. When he worked with Apple, he took his idea of biomorphism and applied it to a product for millions. He took a purely functional thing, a watch strap, and turned it into a seamless, comfortable extension of the human body. That strap doesn't feel like a piece of tech. It feels like it belongs on your wrist. The material is honest, the form is familiar. That is the Newson Principle in action. And then you see his incredible range. He took a classic, iconic object, the Louis Vuitton trunk, and completely reimagined it. He didn't just throw out its history, he respected it, but he applied his logic of modern materials and seamless flow, making it lighter, stronger, and way more intuitive for a modern traveler. He brought a familiar future to a legacy brand. He even took his philosophy into one of the most intense environments you can imagine, the inside of a Ferrari. In here, he applied the logic of the comfort level to a high-performance machine. The result is an interior that feels incredibly advanced and focused, but also somehow intuitive and comfortable for the driver. It just proves that even at 200 miles an hour, familiarity and joy are absolutely essential. And that brings us full circle. Remember that thing he hammered together by hand in that Sydney workshop back in '86? Well, in 2015, one of the originals sold for nearly £2.5 million. And look, that number isn't just about money. It's the ultimate proof. It's the final, undeniable validation of his entire system. It proves that committing to material purity, to a familiar future, and to your own vision can create absolutely staggering, world-changing value. So this whole journey through Marc Newson's career isn't just a history lesson. It's a playbook. His story is for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider, who felt like they were locked out by the experts. The same principles he used to reshape global design can be applied to your work, your life, whatever you're trying to create. Let's make this personal. I want you to really ask yourself this question. What is your Lockheed Lounge? What is that one project, that one task, that one part of your job that you've just decided is boring or utilitarian? What could happen if you stopped searching for some radical, original, new idea and instead just committed deeply to making it more familiar, more intuitive, more joyful? What future might be hiding inside it? Here's the big takeaway from all this. Stop the desperate hunt for originality. Instead, start remixing the reality that's right in front of you. Raise your connection to the human, the tactile, the intuitive. Because when you do that, you stop being a victim of trends or other people's opinions, and you start becoming the master of the outcome. You get to control the story because you are grounded in a real, tangible truth. Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Newson's story teaches us that your unique point of view, your commitment to your craft, your absolute dedication to a core belief, that is your form. And that form isn't just a style, it's the actual code for your own greatness. The truth is always in the curve.